This is the NWA World's Women's Champion Thunder Rosa. Thank you for watching Mark's Name Joe. Un saludo a todos, cuídense mucho y a dar trancazos, cabrones.
Welcome back to Mark's Name Joe. Today we're celebrating 30 years of Chris Jericho, the GOAT of professional wrestling. We're going to be talking about some of our favorite moments, some of our favorite accomplishments of one of our favorite superstars.
Yes, we are. The best, the greatest, the GOAT, Chris Jericho.
You know, side note, if somebody had told me that they thought Chris Jericho was the GOAT, I don't know, 2015, 16, 17, I wouldn't have agreed with them. I would have moved on. I would have said Austin, Rock, Hogan, Flair, anybody that deserves to be on that pantheon. But the last few years of Jericho's career, he has proven that he is the greatest, most charismatic performer in the history of professional wrestling. Don't at me. I mean, if you want to at me, my at's in the description. Go ahead and at me.
I'm gonna at you because I agree. He's great all around.
Very much so.
Simple.
He's been a solid in-ring worker. He's been one of the best promos in the company. He has the ability to walk the fine line between funny and straight man the entire time he's in a promo. I have no idea how anybody can share a ring and a microphone with him and not bust out laughing. It's amazing watching the man do his job, and it seems like he's aging like fine wine, and he's getting better as he goes.
I want some of that wine because he doesn't look as old as he is. Yeah, give it to us, please.
All right. So what would you say is one of your favorite Chris Jericho moments?
Let's start it off with this. Years ago, back when you were just a little kid, I just rewatched this moment when The Rock is in the ring and he's running his promo on the Big Show. All right. And all of a sudden we get that countdown. And nobody knows what's happening. Nobody knows what's happening. I had no clue who was coming. Back then, there wasn't like rumors all over the place. It's not like
no Twitter or no dirt sheets.
No, there was nothing. And that countdown hit, and everybody knew who Jericho was if you're a wrestling fan. Because you did watch WCW. I used my VCR to record it.
What's that, Daddy?
All of a sudden, I just watching it. I literally marked out back then. I just marked out again when I watched it, seeing Jericho come across the screen. That place exploded.
It very much so did. That was actually, speaking of, me being a youngster, that was one of the first company switches that I ever really saw in pro wrestling. I was a WCW guy through and through because I idolized Goldberg.
Right.
And seeing Jericho come across the screen, seeing Chris Jericho walk out, little 8-year-old me, because this is 1999 we're talking about, little 8-year-old me, my jaw hits the floor. I'm like, I know this guy. This is great. And the promo that he cuts is amazing.
Unmatched, man. Let's just say this. The Rock in the ring, he's just going back and forth and pacing, and he was selling it, man. And everything Jericho said from the first words of Raw is Jericho referred to, like everything he said, he referred to the WWE at the time as a snooze fest, which it is today, and that he was there to save it. And I can't go on about this promo. I could watch it over and over and over again. It was
he could show up on SmackDown on Friday, say that promo word for word, and it would mean exactly the same thing. He talked about so many things that the wrestling community on Twitter harps on to this day. He talked about TV ratings of all things. And it was just impressive listening to it because I saw it happen. I watched that episode of Raw live, and I seemed to have forgotten how important it was. I mean, how am I supposed to really remember something that happened 21 years ago? But watching it again today, it's striking how significant that moment was.
Not that he doesn't today, but he had the crowd eating right out of his hand. Everything about that was awesome. I could watch it over and over and just mark out every time. It was awesome. And then the whole entire Rock with his typical, what's your name again? And I already told you, it doesn't matter. It was It was great, and it really did jumpstart Chris Jericho. I mean, he was good in WCW, but that moment put him on a different level for everything.
That's a very good point, that he was good in WCW.
Yeah.
But WWF made him a star with how they presented him.
Exactly.
And I don't think there was anybody around back then to complain that he was a WCW guy.
No, not back then. But
thankfully, Twitter was not around back then.
Oh man, yeah, it would have been looked at pretty negative.
Yeah,
it would have. And you know what? We're gonna experience it again one day because of the two companies.
I think we've experienced it with Moxley
and Miro, but
yeah,
the big one is gonna be when somebody leaves AEW and shows up in WWE. That is gonna be, if handled right, it could be the new Chris Jericho Y2J moment.
It's already happened. Somebody's already gone from AEW to WWE.
Oh yeah,
Pineapple Pete.
Oh,
yes, one of Jericho's greatest creations in AEW. The nickname Pineapple Pete.
Yes,
Shug
because
D.
I marked
he
out.
Lost He lost a foot race to Bianca Belair on Raw a couple of weeks ago, and he's been ringside for.
Not the same, Joe. That's not the same.
He's been ringside for some Raw Undergrounds too.
Watch it. Mark my words. It'll happen again when MJF goes to WWE. I'm calling it.
All right.
Not anytime soon, but
okay.
All right, let's go on. Keep going here. What do you got?
I'm going to fast forward 16-ish years to the Festival of Friendship. The whole partnership of Jericho and Kevin Owens was outstanding. They played off of each other so well because Kevin Owens does a great job of being the straight guy, where Jericho could be the comic, and they could play off of each other. They could bounce it off of each other the entire time. And it is just, it was amazing. It was the best thing in WWE that was happening at that whole time. You had Owens holding the Universal title, and you had Jericho with the United States Championship. There's been little bits of dissension here and there, but it gets to this boiling point. And Jericho is trying everything that he can to save this friendship. He throws on the Festival of Friendship that gives us some of the greatest things we've ever seen on WWE TV, like the creation of Kevin. It was my computer background for the longest time. It was such a great riff on the classical art there. And I just remember watching it, knowing that someone's going in through that TV. As the promo is going on, Jericho is genuinely welling up with tears, because as much as he's a professional saying a promo, I really do believe that he felt everything that he said in that, saying things like Kevin Owens is his best friend. The last year of WWE that he's had has been one of the best in his career, because at that point it really was. He had some fantastic matches, spent most of it as the United States champion. I believe most of us thought that match that was going to come out of the Festival of Friendship deserved to be for the Universal title, deserved to be one of the main events at WrestleMania. I don't want to necessarily get too far into my feelings on Goldberg.
I was going to say probably the biggest missed opportunity in WWE to recent memory was not putting Jericho versus Owens in that title match at WrestleMania. Thank God for your childhood hero, though, huh?
I understand, man. I still really haven't processed how I felt about Goldberg's last few matches, but this isn't a Goldberg video. This is a Jericho video. And I'm sure if Jericho knows that if I even said Goldberg in this, Jericho would be pissed off.
It points out the whole Festival of Friends, friendship. It points out how good Jericho makes people around him. They both look great. They had such a good chemistry together. This was during the list time as well, wasn't it?
Yes, very much so.
One of the most popular things in WWE was you just made the list, and I can't think of anything.
On my desk.
That's a good
just
one
made
too.
The list.
I can't think of any other times where you knew you just made the list was coming, and you would mark out every time you heard it.
It's just like, just say it, Chris.
Every
say it.
time. It's so disappointing that match didn't happen. It really, it happened, but it should have been for the Universal title.
Because that really was Jericho's last moment with WWE on the main roster. Because he did show up with the Greatest Royal Rumble. He was one of the participants. He was one of like the 7,000 people in the ring.
Right. And you know what? That was very forgettable.
It was
Honestly,
incredibly forgettable.
I totally forgot he was even in that.
But his match at WrestleMania, and he had a couple little things shortly thereafter, but that was his exit from WWE.
Yeah.
And I'm sad that somebody as iconic, somebody as great as him was sent off in such a poor way.
I know that he's talked about this, but I don't think that you've seen the last of him there. He might open his mouth and say certain things now and here, but in the end, when they call him in for that Hall of Fame, I think that he'll jump on it when he's retired.
He's wrestled his last match for Vince McMahon.
Yes,
I think we can all agree that if the WWE Hall of Fame decides to open their doors to these famous AEW defectors, that will be a great olive branch to extend, and I'm sure Jericho would love to go.
I agree. So I'm going to jump right into one of my next accomplishments of his prestigious career. There's a lot that you could point out when it comes to Chris Jericho and world titles, any kind of title. You can talk about up and down the list. I mean, the list is huge, even in his time in New Japan, So let's talk about one-time WWE champion. He was 5-time world heavyweight champion. He was 2-time U.S. champion, and he was 9-time Intercontinental champion for WWE. The only other person close to Jericho when it comes to an Intercontinental championship is The Miz. His two biggest accomplishments was the first. He was crowned the first undisputed champion.
That he was.
WWE, and that big gold belt, man, that thing was beautiful. One of my favorite championships. And then we're going to go to more recent. He was the right choice to crown the first AEW champion. When you talk to history, if you're talking 20 years from now, say AEW is around just as long as WWE is, which probably going to happen. They're going to look at the history of that title one day, and they're going to be like the first ever champion, Chris Jericho, and who better? Mm-hmm. Who better to have that?
Yeah, as much as I wanted Hangman to win that match, Jericho was the right choice.
100%. Hangman will have his day. He's a young guy.
No, 100%.
And Jericho was the right choice for all this. I mean, I wish that he did have that Universal title shot. I think that would have been a cool pop against, like we just talked about, if he ended up winning that thing at WrestleMania over Owens. That would have been awesome. But in the end, the guy's extremely decorated when it comes to gold, and he deserves every bit of it.
Let's talk about that first undisputed championship. Okay. He beat The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin in one night.
And I remember that. If you told me today that was going to happen down the line, that he would beat Stone Cold and The Rock, no way.
I mean, separately, in beating both of them separately in title matches, that is a feather in anybody's cap.
Yep.
Beating them both in the same night. That's an accomplishment that's never going to be touched.
No.
And not because Austin and Rock are never going to wrestle again, but because nobody is going to get to that level of Austin or Rock ever again. And being able to, that's like beating John Cena and Brock Lesnar right now, if you had to come up with something. And
or you could say that's like beating John Cena and Chris Jericho.
Yeah. I mean,
he's up there now. He is one of the best of all time.
Imagine if Hangman needs to beat both Kenny Omega and Chris Jericho for his first championship. But that even still pales in comparison to the feat that he pulled off. And that's something that it blows my mind that looking back that they WWF really pushed Chris Jericho.
That was awesome. Yes.
They took somebody that, as we've already said, was good, and they made him undeniable. And it's such a parallel to what's happening with AEW right now. And that's going to lead me into my second thing that I really loved about Chris Jericho. My second moment that really sticks with me is when Chris Jericho came out to a crowd singing Judas, and he says the phrase, "I'm all in with All Elite Wrestling." If the BTE crew made All Elite Wrestling, and that was it. It was Kenny, Cody, the Bucks, Hangman. If it was just them, it would have gotten eyes, but it would have been very much so seen as another TNA.
I agree.
Another minor league competitor.
I agree.
Making
Jericho still made it stand out.
Yeah, Chris Jericho made a statement that they were there to compete, that they were there to be an alternative, that they were there to shake up and spice up and revive the wrestling world. And Chris Jericho has since become one of the most important and influential characters in pro wrestling as a whole. Yes, at times he's taken some tasteless shots at his former employer. I get it. I understand. But we've gotten so many iconic moments out of this. The creation of his stable, the Inner Circle, the little bit of the bubbly. Like, come on. That alone was one of the most iconic things that he's ever done. Him poking fun at himself with the lexicon of Le Champion. Like, we all groaned. We all were like, all right, you got to make that one callback. I get it. But he's done such an impressive job of keeping himself relevant, keeping himself impressive in the ring, and leading this company from the ground up to where they are now a year in. He's incredible for what he's been able to do.
He is the king, the GOAT, the god of all nicknames. Think of all the nicknames he's had. I mean, what's his most recent one? The Mr. Million Views, or
he's been Le Demo God,
everything.
Le Champion,
Lionheart to, I mean, Y2J to everything. I think at one time he even called himself Vitamin C. And he took, I mean, you could take stuff like that. He can take anything and just turn it into money.
Yes.
Let's just say there may never be another Jericho. There may, but I'm saying right now it's very hard. If we're still doing this way down the road and we're old and I'm older and we're talking about Jericho and his career and his life again, you know, and we're like, okay, this guy's the new Jericho. There might not be another one. And he's still giving it his all right now. I mean,
he's 49 years old.
I appreciate him.
Better than he's ever been.
I don't think when he was much younger that he was as much appreciated, because you're thinking back in 99 when he showed up, yes, you mark out, but then, oh man, he starts talking against The Rock and you're like, oh, I can't stand this. And just what he's supposed to make you feel. Yeah. You know, he's a bad guy. He's a great heel.
Yes, he is.
So in the end, let's just talk about Jericho, and he is, to me, the greatest of all time. He is best performer. He is the best wrestler. And he gives it his all for the fans, which is us. And we are big fans. We are marks. And we do mark for Jericho still.
We'll mark for Jericho.
Yes, we will.
So we've celebrated 30 years of Chris Jericho with a few of our favorite moments. Leave in the comments some of your favorite moments of Chris Jericho. We're talking about the list of 1,004 holds. We're talking about when he mocked Goldberg's entrance. Are we talking about his return to the company in like 2007? Are we talking about anything that he's done with Fozzy? I don't know. Leave it in the comments. And make sure on your way out that you like, you share, and you subscribe to Mark's Name Joe.